we can consider the meaning of life and the purpose of our life in the framework of meditation, so that we give ourselves some space in the day to think about it, because otherwise invariably we don't, because there's endless things to be doing, and if we're not careful, they rob us of living a meaningful and purposeful life, whether that's other people or other things. There's always things to do. There's always places to be. Well, not always places to be, not at the moment with COVID, but there's always things to do. And who decides? Who decides? And how do we decide what we're going to use each moment of our life on? And when we look back on our deathbed, we'll be able to say, I focused on some good stuff. I did what I set out to do. It was meaningful. It was a meaningful life. It was a purposeful life. Whatever that means for us, whatever that means, and it can mean anything we want it to mean. So there's this, I think at some point in our lives, we come to a question of what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? And where do we start to look? We might look in meditation, in religion. We may look in philosophy, psychology, arts and crafts, our work, hedonism, looking for pleasure, adrenaline rush. None of it's right or wrong, but for us individually, are we looking in the right place to give us the answers that seem right? Are they giving the answers that we want? And we don't find is there a stone carved with the meaning and purpose of life on it, that we all bow down to and aspire to, that is from its own side implicitly correct as to the meaning and purpose of our life? I don't think there is. It doesn't seem to be the way we find the world to be. If it was, no one would have any problem with what the meaning and purpose of life are, because it would be on that stone over there, and we would follow it, and it would meet us here and here, and it would seem absolutely right. And yet, that just isn't what we find life to be, is it? It's not the experience that we find. We find a lot of people, and it may be us now, it may be us in the future, it may have been us in the past, but a lot of people right now on Earth will be wondering about their purpose in life and the meaning of life. Some of those people will be suicidal because they can't find an answer and they're in a lot of pain. Some of those people will be hopeful, curious, and searching. And the question is where to search, where to find the answers. Doesn't seem like anybody else can tell us the answers. And are there objective answers to these questions? If so, where are they? Under which rock do they lie? And they're ideas, aren't they? They're ideas. They're concepts. That life has meaning and that life has purpose are ideas. If we sit here at the moment completely content with a still mind, there's no need for a purpose or meaning. I mean, it can arise naturally or not. There's still contentment, there's still stillness. So the need for purpose and meaning comes from a craving for them, comes from a craving for purpose and a craving for meaning. But it also, I think, comes from a natural flow of life that we seem to want to live a good life. We want to live a virtuous, good life that's of benefit to ourselves, of benefit to others, And we're able to look back and think that's a life, that's a day, that's a week, that's a month, that's a year, that's a decade. That's a life worth living. As in, we haven't wasted it. Do we feel remorseful that we've wasted it or not? So in meditation, we can think about these things in a structured way, because if I was to say to you, what's the meaning of your life? It's like, such a big question, it blows our mind. It shuts our mind down. I don't know. What's the purpose of your life? Again, it's just too big a question for us. Often, too big a question to come out directly. We have to sort of circle it or come at it from different angles and tickle it and poke it and be curious about those questions by asking different questions. And that's what I'll do in the guided meditation on the purpose and meaning of life. So we can choose not to have any purpose and any meaning in our life. And as long as there's contentment, there's no problem. If we don't have contentment and we feel that there's no purpose or meaning in life, we can't find any out there, or we can't find any in here that feels to fit, then we can get depressed. It seems like that's part of the condition for depression sometimes for people. And actually the problem is lack of contentment. The problem is busyness of mind and pain inside of us. Because those two are connected. If we've got pain inside of us that we can't accept, that we're fighting, running away from, then there's no contentment, and therefore there's a need to have, a desperate need then to have purpose and meaning in our life. And then we can chase it. We can start looking under rocks and around corners and in rooms and in companies and in sports centres or Harrods, wherever we may look. And if we're content and we don't have this urge to search, we can still choose to have meaning and purpose in our life or not. We can choose. And it can change from one day to the next, one moment to the next, because they're concepts. If they come in our mind and we decide something feels right for us, and the next day it doesn't, then it doesn't. There's no harm done. We don't have a duty to anyone to be consistent, because there's only atoms and thoughts and feelings playing out. So why should there be a continuum to those in terms of consistency? When we watch what's appearing to us, what's appearing, and all that can be evidenced and found, there's no basis for consistency, because we don't know what it's all coming out from and where it's all going. So it's all right to have a different meaning of life and purpose of life from one day to the next, one week, month, year, change it. In my experience, when we stop searching externally for what the meaning and purpose of life are, we're faced with an existential we're faced with an existential pain, an existential terror, if we look right into that, because what we're faced with is the acknowledgement that we're responsible for our life 100%. We are responsible for our life. Now we can abdicate that responsibility and we can surrender to what is, but we've still got to choose what we do when we get up in the morning. We've still got to choose what we do with each moment of our life and who we do it with and what meaning it has, what purpose it has. Those answers aren't given to us unless we're very, very lucky and we have some very specific vocation. And when we move through the fear, the terror of full personal responsibility, then there's deep peace, there's contentment. Because then there's no struggle for purpose or meaning, there's no fight for it, there's no searching, desperation for it, there's no dissatisfaction with not knowing what it is. That's what I've found anyway. That's been my experience, the other side of that existential terror, having sat with it. Quite enjoyed it. It's fascinating to experience that terror. A wonderful moment in my life. And I can see why people get close to that and back away again. Because Most of us don't have the propensity to sit with terror in a composed way, unfortunately. We back off, and then we come to it and we back off. Coming to it and backing off, if I can very contentiously say, that's philosophy. that's the philosopher getting towards that existential terror, backing off. It's philosophy in many a French film, black and white French film. But contentment doesn't need any of that, but it can play in it. It can play in it and choose. So we're going to do a meditation now that explores for us, from a base of peace, from meditative peace, explores for us what our natural inclinations might be towards purpose and meaning. So purpose, what we're going to do with our life, meaning the values, I suppose, the values that we hold and embody and act from. So if you'd like to get comfortable, there's a great deal of empowerment in recognizing that we get to choose what we give, what meaning we give to our life, and what purpose we choose to give to our limbs and our mind, our thoughts and our feelings and our actions, because that's all there is ultimately. What do our actions of body, speech and mind go towards? What are they helping with? What are they creating more of or less of in the world that's important? So I'll start with a question that is very simple. And through the piece of meditation, we can see what arises for us. What's important for you? What's important for you? Or what's important to you? Whichever invokes a natural inquiry in you. What's important for you? What's important to you? I'll give you plenty of space and time to think about it, to chew on it, to explore it. Not what's been important to you in the past, although it may be inform your future and your present, but what's important now? And what was important that you might have lost track of, if that helps. And what do you want to be your life in service of? What do you want your life to be in service of? In service of peace, love, truth, fun, joy, pleasure, harmony, relationship, intimacy. What do you want your life to be in service of from here on in? Naturally, from your heart, what jumps out? And how is that going to manifest for you? How, for you specifically, how will that manifest? What does that look like as a verbally, from verbal action? What might that look like for you as a verbal action in different instances? If your mind wanders away, just come back to the question and contemplate again. How might it manifest for you in terms of your thoughts? Where do you want to direct your thoughts in service of this? And your body. What bodily actions will support this? You want your life to be in service of. What bodily actions will support this? Okay, so we can come back to these questions, and I'll post this on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, so you can always come back to them. And now what I'd like you to do is we're going to come to the idea of the future, looking backwards at our life. So I'd like you to imagine that there are people around your grave and they're speaking about you poignantly, about your life. What would you like them to be saying? Okay, so that's an interesting exercise to do, to think about what you would want people to be saying about you around your grave. It helps us to put everything into perspective and what's important. So finally, I'd like you to consider what you're going to do to embody this, to live this, to have this direction in your life, this emphasis in your life for the future, from today onwards, from now onwards. How's it going to look in different ways? And very importantly, what are you going to say no to have more of this in your life? To create space for this, what are you going to say no to? and commit to saying no to. In a good way, in a really nice, lovely, meaningful way. What are you going to say no to create the space for the yeses of living meaningfully and purposefully? Then, when it feels comfortable, just gently allow your eyes to open. We've covered a few things there. Don't worry, you'll remember what you need to remember. Just relax your mind. Allow your eyes to open, and we'll just recall that we were doing tonight's class to be a benefit to ourselves and to others. To hold that intention after the class. Thank you.